You know what smell I'm talking about. You don't even have to be inside the house yet. You're still out in the front yard chasing lightning bugs, and then that smell hits you. Something rich and slow and deep coming right through the screen door. Your little legs just start moving on their own because whatever mama has going on that stove, you do not want to miss it. That's where this video begins. Not in a cookbook, right there on that porch with your heart already full before you even sat down. Now come on in and sit down. My name is Gloria. I am 81 years old and I have been cooking since I was tall enough to see over the edge of my mama's cast iron skillet. Today I want to take you back to the kitchens of the 1960s, to the suppers our mamas put on the table with almost nothing in their pockets and so much love in their hands that you couldn't tell the difference. These weren't fancy meals. Lord, no. What there was a mama who knew how to take the cheap cuts, the dried beans, the things other people turned their noses up at, and turned them into something that made her children feel like the richest kids in the world. I'm going to share 20 of those suppers today, along with the stories behind them, because that's the part the recipe cards always left out. Just sit here with me, and let's remember together. Before we get started, I have to tell you about one recipe in particular. Number 17, my mama's Sunday smothered pork chops. I'm not ready to talk about it just yet, but I'll tell you this much. The first time I made that dish after my mama passed, I had to sit down right there on the kitchen floor and cry because I could feel her standing right next to me. That recipe's coming, and I hope you'll have a tissue nearby. I know I will. Let's start from the beginning. Number 1, pinto bean soup with ham hock. There was always a pot of beans going in our house. Mama kept dried pinto beans in a big glass jar on the counter, and when money was tight, which was often, she'd set them to soaking the night before. By the next afternoon, she'd have them on the back burner with a smoky ham hock, diced onion, and a bay leaf, cooking low and slow until those beans were so soft they'd almost melt on your tongue. Ham hocks were the throwaway cut, the part nobody with money wanted, but our mamas knew something those folks didn't. The bone and the fat and the collagen in that hock gave a pot of beans more flavor than the most expensive cut of meat. We ate that soup with cornbread every time, and it filled you up in a way fancy food just doesn't. That's the genius of soul food cooking. Number 2, cornbread in a cast iron skillet. You cannot talk about bean soup without talking about cornbread. Not that sweet, cakey cornbread you get in restaurants nowadays. Real Southern cornbread. Just cornmeal, a little flour, buttermilk, an egg, some bacon grease, and salt. Mama mixed it up in a crockery bowl, poured it into a screaming hot greased cast iron skillet, and slid it in the oven. You'd hear it sizzle when the batter hit that pan, and the crust on the bottom was something else entirely. Sometimes cornbread wasn't just a side dish, it was the supper. On lean nights, Mama would crumble a piece into a glass of cold buttermilk and call it done. Us kids thought it was a treat. I didn't understand until much later that it was her way of making sure everybody's belly was full before bed. Cornbread sopped in the pot, liquor from a mess of greens. Lord, have mercy. That right there is a complete meal. Number 3, fried salt pork with white gravy. Salt pork came in a little block. Pork fat with streaks of meat cured heavy in salt. Mama would slice it thin, soak it in water a while to draw some salt out, pat it dry, and fry it until golden and crispy. Then she'd make white gravy right in that same pan. Flour stirred into the drippings, milk poured in slow and stirred until it thickened into the richest gravy you ever tasted. That gravy went over biscuits mostly, sometimes rice, My brother Leroy used to say Mama's white gravy could make an old shoe taste good. And I believe him. There's a magic in that pan when you know how to work with what the pork left behind. She turned something most folks discarded into a supper the whole family was grateful for. Number 4, neck bones and rice. When I was a girl, you could buy a big bag of pork neck bones for almost nothing. They were bony and awkward, and most people didn't know what to do with them. Mama knew. She'd season them with salt, pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder, brown them in her heavy pot, add water, cover it up, and let them cook a couple of hours until the meat was falling off the bone and the broth had turned silky and deep. She'd serve it over white rice. You'd use your fingers to pull every bit of meat free while the rice soaked up that wonderful broth. My daddy used to say neck bones were the poor man's steak, and he said it with real pride. There was no shame in our house about what we ate, only gratitude that Mama could make it taste like that. Number 5, skillet, fried potatoes and onions. This one right here might be the simplest thing on this whole list, and it might also be the one I still make the most. Potatoes sliced thin and onions sliced right alongside them, cooked down in a cast iron skillet with bacon grease and a heavy hand with the salt and pepper. Lid on first so they steam a little, then the lid comes off to let them get golden and crispy on the edges. The smell of onions and potatoes frying in bacon grease is one of the great smells in this world. Sometimes Mama would crack a couple of eggs right over the top and scramble them in. A full supper without spending another penny. However she did it, we ate every bite and asked if there was more. That skillet never went back to the stove empty. Let me stop here for just a moment. Picture a Tuesday night in 1963. 6 children in our house. Daddy works long hours and comes home tired. No microwave, no takeout, no drive-through. Just a refrigerator with some things in it, a pantry with some things on the shelves, and a mama who has been on her feet all day, still standing at that stove, making it all come together. She never had a recipe book open. Not once. Everything she knew was in her hands and her nose. She knew by the sound of the skillet whether the heat was right. She knew by the smell of the beans whether they needed salt. That kitchen was her domain and her art studio. I think about that every time I cook. Number 6, crackling cornbread. If regular cornbread was good, crackling cornbread was something close to heaven. Cracklings are the crispy bits left over when you render pork fat, salty and crunchy and porky, and fold it into cornbread batter. They give you little pockets of crunch that make you close your eyes when you bite into it. When hog killing time came in fall, Mama saved the cracklings and used them in cornbread for weeks. That pan came out smelling so good the neighbors found reasons to stop by. Simple ingredient, complicated taste. You take a bite and wonder how something this cheap can be this rich. The answer is always the same. Pork, skill, and love. Number 7, butter beans with fatback. Butter beans are what some folks call lima beans, though if you said that in our house, Mama would look at you sideways. She'd put a piece of fatback right in the pot with the soaked beans, cover with water, bring it up to a simmer, and leave it alone for most of the afternoon, checking now and then and letting time do the real work. By supper time, those beans would be so creamy they practically fell apart, and the broth thick and rich from all the starch the beans gave off. A big scoop over white rice with cornbread was a complete supper. That was comfort. That was home. Don't let anybody tell you different. Number 8, salmon patties from a can. Friday nights meant salmon patties. Don't make a face. Hear me out. Canned salmon in Mama's hands turned into something golden and crispy that we looked forward to all week. She'd drain the can, mix the fish with crushed saltine crackers, a beaten egg, diced onion, a little mustard, salt, and pepper, form them into patties, and fry them until properly crispy. The crunch when you bit into one was just right. That canned salmon, seasoned up and fried properly, tasted nothing like you'd expect. Mama made a simple white sauce alongside, or just ketchup for us kids. Either way, we ate every crumb and licked our fingers. Salmon patties were a Friday night blessing, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Number 9, smothered cabbage. One head of cabbage cost almost nothing, and in the right hands it could feed a whole family. Mama would slice it into ribbons and cook it in a big pot with a piece of fatback, a diced onion, salt, pepper, and just a pinch of sugar, covered on low heat, stirring now and then until that cabbage cooked way down and turned tender and silky and almost sweet. Smothered cabbage works beautifully alongside neck bones or ham hocks, and on its own, spooned over cornbread, it's more than enough for supper. My children weren't sure about cabbage when they were small. Once they tasted it made this way, low and slow with good seasoning, they came around fast. That's the thing about these old methods. They knew how to coax the best out of the plainest ingredient. Number 10, chicken and dumplings. Chicken and dumplings sounds humble until you taste it, and then you understand why people have been making it for generations. Mama would start with a whole stewing hen, cheaper than fryers, but far more flavorful. She'd simmer it in a big pot with onion, celery, salt, pepper, and a bay leaf for a couple of hours until the meat fell off the bone. She'd shred the chicken and put it back in that beautiful golden broth. Then came the dumplings, flour, baking powder, salt, butter, and milk worked into a soft dough, dropped by spoonfuls into the simmering broth, lid on for 15 minutes until puffed and pillowy and soaked through with chicken flavor, nearly melting in your mouth. A bowl of chicken and dumplings on a cold evening is one of the great kindnesses this world has to offer. Now, honey, I want to stop for just a minute. We're halfway through, and I want to hear from you. Did your mama make any of these dishes? Do you remember sitting at that kitchen table as a child with a plate in front of you that smelled like everything good in the world? Go down to the comments and tell me what supper you still dream about. I read every comment, and I love your stories just as much as I love telling mine. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now would be a good time. I put out new videos every week, each one a little piece of the kitchen memories I carry with me. I would love to have you as part of this family. Now, let's keep going. I have to tell you about church suppers. If you grew up going to a certain kind of church, you know exactly what I mean. After service, the women would bring dishes, long tables in the fellowship hall loaded with food, every woman known for her one special thing. Folks would walk in already steering towards Sister May's sweet potato casserole or my grandmama's 7-layer chocolate cake. Nobody had much money, but you'd never know it looking at those tables. It was abundance. It was community. It was love made visible. Those women were the unsung artists of our neighborhood, and what they could do with a tight budget was nothing short of remarkable. I try to honor them every time I cook. Number 11, sweet potato pie for supper. Yes, sweet potato pie is a dessert. I know that. But there were nights when Mama would make sweet potato pies early in the day, and by supper time, that was just what we were having. A slice of sweet potato pie, a glass of cold milk, a biscuit on the side. That was a fine supper. And I don't care what anyone says. She made her filling from boiled sweet potatoes mashed smooth with butter, sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, vanilla, and eggs, poured into a homemade crust and baked until just firm and golden. Sweet potatoes are filling, nutritious, and cheap. And in the right hands, they taste like something precious. Our mamas knew that better than any cookbook ever could. Number 12. Fried bologna sandwiches. Before you say a word, hear me out. Fried bologna sandwiches are not a joke. You score the bologna around the edges, fry it in a hot, dry skillet until both sides are browned and crispy and the middle puffs up like a little pillow. That's the key. It has to be crispy. A soft fried bologna sandwich is not the same thing at all. You put that crispy bologna on white bread with mustard and maybe a slice of onion, and you have something that costs almost nothing and tastes entirely satisfying. My brother James would eat 3 in one sitting and ask if there were more. Lord, I miss that man. He would laugh so loud it rattled the windows. These little meals hold people inside them, and don't you ever forget that. Number 13. Black-eyed peas and stewed tomatoes. Black-eyed peas cooked with a ham hock, then stirred together with stewed tomatoes and cooked down until soft and saucy. Over rice or with cornbread, this is deeply satisfying in a way that warms you from the inside out. The earthiness of the peas, the brightness of the tomatoes, the smokiness of the pork, it all balances into something that tastes like it took all day, even when it didn't. In the South, black-eyed peas on New Year's Day meant good luck. But in our house, they were for any Tuesday when money ran short. And every time they were on the table, somebody felt lucky to have a meal that good. That says everything about honest, humble cooking. Number 14. Macaroni and tomatoes. Don't confuse this with macaroni and cheese. Macaroni and tomatoes is cooked. Elbow macaroni stirred into stewed tomatoes with butter, a pinch of sugar, salt, and pepper. Cook together until the macaroni soaks up that tomato and everything thickens into something saucy and slightly sweet that is unlike anything else. The butter makes it rich, the sugar cuts the acid, and the macaroni gives it real heft. Mama served it with a pork chop when she had one, but plenty of nights it stood alone and nobody complained. It doesn't photograph well and doesn't sound impressive, but it disappears from the pot in about 5 minutes flat. Some of the best food in this world looks like nothing and tastes like everything. Number 15. Egg gravy over biscuits. When the cupboard was genuinely sparse, Mama made egg gravy over biscuits and made it seem like a choice rather than a necessity. She'd make her biscuits first. Flour and lard and buttermilk worked just enough to come together, baked until they rose up tall and golden. While the biscuits baked, she'd melt butter in a skillet, whisk in flour, add milk to make a smooth white gravy, then crack a few eggs in and scramble them gently so you got soft bits of egg throughout. Split those biscuits open and pour that egg gravy right over the top. That was supper. I would eat that tonight and be completely happy. Sometimes the simplest thing is the best thing, and my mama proved that every time she stood at that stove. My grandmother on my father's side, we called her Big Mama, had a saying I've carried my whole life. A good cook never panics and never wastes. Never panics means when the refrigerator is nearly empty, you don't sit down and cry. You look at what you have and start thinking. Big Mama could walk into a bare kitchen and 45 minutes later feed 10 people. Never waste meant everything was used. Chicken bones became broth. Stale bread became pudding. The pot liquor from the greens went into the cornbread or got drunk straight because it was full of goodness. Nothing left that kitchen without giving everything it had. I try to cook like Big Mama every single day. Number 16. Chitterlings. Chitlins. I know some of you just flinched, but you stay right here because chitlins have a history that deserves respect. Chitterlings are the small intestines of the hog, the scraps left after the good cuts were taken. For black families who had been making the most of what remained since the days of slavery, chitlins represented both hardship and a remarkable creativity. Cleaning and cooking them takes all day, boiled low and slow for hours with onion, garlic, and hot pepper. The smell while they cook is distinctive. It clears the neighborhood, and that is a fact. But at the end of that long process, what you have is tender, deeply flavorful, and satisfying. Served on a holiday alongside black-eyed peas and greens and cornbread, chitlins were a celebration and a statement. They are part of our history and they deserve their place at this table. Number 17. Sunday, smothered pork chops. And here we are. I told you we'd get here. My mama made smothered pork chops every Sunday of my childhood. Every single Sunday, she'd season thick bone-in chops with salt, pepper, garlic powder, and paprika, dredge them in flour, and brown them in her big iron skillet until deeply golden. Then she'd set them aside. In those same drippings, she'd cook sliced onions slow and patient until they turned soft and sweet. Then flour into those onions. Chicken broth stirred in until it became a rich, dark brown gravy. She'd lay those pork chops right back in, put the lid on, turn the heat to low, and leave them for another hour. By Sunday dinner, those chops were so tender you could cut them with a spoon, the meat pulling free from the bone with almost no effort. And that onion gravy, I have never tasted anything quite like it. My mama passed in 1987. The first Sunday after she was gone, I tried to make those pork chops. And when I poured the broth into that pan and stirred it into gravy, and that smell hit me, that exact smell, the smell of every Sunday of my entire life, I couldn't hold it together. I sat right down on that kitchen floor and cried until there were no tears left. Because food carries people with us long after they're gone. Every time I make those pork chops, my mama is right here. Make these pork chops. Cook them slow. Don't rush them. Think of whoever first taught you that love lives in the kitchen. Number 18. Hog maw and collard greens. Hog maw is the stomach of the pig, and like chitlins, it found its way onto tables where nothing was wasted. Braised low and slow, it becomes tender and deeply flavored. Cooked alongside collard greens cut into ribbons and simmered with smoked ham hocks until silky and dark, you have a whole, nourishing meal in one pot. Collard greens are magnificent, sturdy and slightly bitter, needing a long, patient cook to become tender and mild. But cook them right with the right smoked pork, and they are among the finest things to ever come out of a Southern kitchen. Nothing from the hog went to waste. That was a value born of necessity that became a culinary philosophy, and we are all better cooks for it. Number 19. Molasses and biscuits. Sometimes supper was the simplest thing imaginable: a pan of fresh biscuits and a jar of molasses. That was it. Molasses was cheap and plentiful in the South, and a jar could last a family a long time. Deep and rich and slightly bittersweet. Poured over a warm buttered biscuit, it soaks right in and turns simple bread into something almost indulgent. I know it sounds like nothing. But picture yourself at a warm kitchen table with your brothers and sisters passing that jar around, tearing biscuits apart, steam rising off them, everybody talking and laughing. The food was simple, but the table was full of everything that mattered. Sometimes the meal that asks the least of you gives you the most in return. Number 20, fried chicken, backs, and wings. The last recipe on our list, and oh, how it brings me joy. Backs and wings were the pieces left behind when someone bought the breast or thigh. But here's the secret every child of a resourceful Southern mama already knows. Those were the best pieces. The backs have dark, flavorful meat tucked into every crevice, and when they're fried in seasoned flour until crispy and golden, you spend happy time working every last bit off the bone. Mama seasoned her flour with salt, pepper, garlic powder, and a little cayenne. She'd soak the pieces in buttermilk, dredge them in that flour, and fry them in a cast iron Dutch oven with enough oil to come halfway up. turning once until both sides were perfect. We ate those chicken backs and wings like they were the finest thing on earth, because to us they were, and they still are. Well, honey, we made it through all 20, and I hope your stomach is growling just a little, because mine certainly is. Pinto bean soup with ham hock, cornbread in a cast iron skillet, fried salt pork with white gravy, neck bones and rice, skillet fried potatoes and onions, crackling cornbread, butter beans with fatback, salmon patties from a can, smothered cabbage, and chicken and dumplings. Sweet potato pie for supper, fried bologna sandwiches, black-eyed peas and stewed tomatoes, macaroni and tomatoes, and egg gravy over biscuits for the lean nights. Chitlins, Mama's Sunday smothered pork chops, hog maw with collard greens, molasses over warm biscuits, and those beautiful fried chicken backs and wings every child in the neighborhood fought over. 20 suppers, 20 stories, 20 ways our mamas said I love you without ever saying a single word. Before I let you go, sit with this a minute. These recipes weren't born from poverty. They were born from wisdom, from women who understood that a good meal isn't about what's expensive. It's about what's given freely, made with care, and what brings people together around a table. Our grandmamas and mamas were some of the greatest cooks who ever lived, and most never got a minute of recognition. This video is my small way of saying their names, of keeping their gifts alive a little longer. Take these recipes and make them in your own kitchen. When you sit down to eat, think of the woman who first made that dish. Say her name. She deserves to be remembered. I love each and every one of you. Thank you for sitting at my table. Next week, I'm taking you through the best Sunday desserts our church mothers ever made. The cakes, the cobblers, the pies, the puddings. You do not want to miss that one. God bless you, and keep cooking with love.